As you know by now, the world over has hit another milestone this year. We turned 30, and to think I started the show when I was only 5. So we want to celebrate with all of you by featuring highlights of some of the best moments over the last 3 decades. In the summer of 1997, I went to New York City to profile one of America's greatest churchmen, Archbishop John Cardinal O'Connor. He served as the Archbishop of New York until his death in 2000. And he opened up to me about his incredible life, his family, as well as his well-known pro-life witness. He also shared some very prescient observations about the post-Vatican II liturgy. In a recent column in the National Catholic Register remembering O'Connor, Archbishop Nelson Perez of Philadelphia called him a saintly hero who lived a life of service, courage, and humility, and a towering figure in Catholic life. I have to agree. When John Paul II appointed O'Connor Archbishop of New York, it was said that he was looking for a man like himself. So that's where I started my interview, asking the Cardinal if he noticed any similarities. Take a look.
I don't personally see any of the resemblances that other people might see because
You
I
don't?
look at him. No, I look at him with so much awe, and he's spiritually up in the stratosphere. He's a mystic to begin with, in my judgment. The other is that he's a world-class philosopher with a specialty in phenomenological personalism. I know a little bit about it. I have a fairly heavy background in both philosophy and psychology.
But Your Eminence, you would agree, stylistically, personally, the way he communicates that message, reaching out to the people. He loves touching people and being with them. And that is a quality I've seen in you when I was here in New York and even now. Was that always part of your pastoral nature, to reach out to the people, to be amongst the people? It is not, it is an uncommon thing amongst your brother bishops who there are some who are rarely seen by their flock.
You can't spend 27 years in military service with the Navy and Marine Corps without being very, very close to people. I lived with people every day. I got seasick with people, with the same waves, the same seas, and the same winds that would beat them up would beat me up. I lived in a hole in the ground with people in Vietnam. I learned to do without any privacy whatsoever. I lived completely without privacy. When you're in a metal container at sea, being tossed and buffeted about, there's no privacy there. And when I would be ashore, I would eat with the people, and the people would eat with me. And that's what I knew for 27 years of my life. And then when I became a bishop for 4 more years with the military services, then I was still traveling very extensively all over the world.
So this really prepared you in a special way for your
yeah, I hadn't even thought of it in that fashion, but I don't see myself as particularly outgoing or anything of that sort. It just comes, it's spontaneous when I get out there with the people. I love to preach to the people. I love being in the pulpit in St. Patrick's Cathedral or wherever I am.
After celebrating the anniversary of a church downtown, he took his love of preaching to Wall Street with great results.
Cardinal O'Connor, New York loves you. New York needs you.
Thank you. I needed that, really.
And the Cardinal can still draw a crowd.
The church tries to be one with all of you.
I don't feel any gulf between the people and myself. And then when I get to these parades, that goes with the territory. You know.
During our visit, the Cardinal celebrated the Puerto Rican Day Parade from the steps of St. Patrick's. He has the rare ability to mix with any group of people and instantly become one of them.
Was that always part of your personality from childhood on? Were you gregarious? Were you easy with people?
I don't think so, because again, I'm not sure that I would even describe myself in that fashion. It just comes out. I'm not a self-describer. I don't spend any time doing that. But I think that I was normal as a kid, and high school and in the seminary.
When was the moment you knew you wanted to be a priest? Was there any one moment?
That's a funny story. I have a cousin who was just about the same age, and he came to see us with his mother in Philadelphia. His father was dead, and I'll never forget, on the living room floor. We lived in a little row house in Philadelphia, tiny little house, and he and we're, I don't know, maybe 16 or so, kneeling on the floor looking at the comics, the funny papers. And suddenly he announced, or his mother announced, that he was going to go to the seminary, be a priest. Well, I was surprised, but my mother and father were applauding him all over the place, and the others in the family. So suddenly I popped up, and they almost died in shock. I said, "Oh, I'm going to be a priest too."
Is that really how it happened?
The irony is that we both applied for the seminary. In those days, you had to take a written examination. And he flunked. I passed. He went someplace else. He went to another seminary, and then he dropped out, and he got married and had children.
And you kept right on with it.
I stayed with him.
Boy, all that for a little applause.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Was it worth it?
That's why if I'm outgoing,
it was there from the beginning. You were one of 4 children in Philadelphia. Your mother was temporarily...
Really 5, and her brother died. Yeah.
1 of 5.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
his brother died. Yeah.
Your mother was temporarily
Blind.
for a period. Did that have any
It's a
impact?
remarkable thing. Yes, I think it did, because I was a little kid, and I remember in the aftermath, I don't remember the period of blindness itself, but for several years, she still had to be going to a doctor for all sorts of exercises and whatnot. But far more than witnessing anything myself was just hearing her talk about it and what it did to her spiritually. She was convinced that it was through a vision, or not through a vision. She was convinced that she had a vision of St. Rita of Cascia, patroness of the blind, and her sight was restored. She was completely blind. And from then on, she never missed the annual novena to the shrine of St. Rita of Cascia. It didn't matter, hot, cold, night, day, and she had to take 2 trolley cars and a bus to get there. And she'd go all by herself and come home all by herself. Well, that made a very profound impression. So when people ask me, when did you think about becoming a priest? I don't really know, because that was part of my earliest intake from my mother.
Your sister, your older sister, said something very interesting that I came across, Dorothy Hamilton.
Yeah, she was always saying things.
You had nothing, but were always looking for anyone who needed help, even as a child. Why?
Yeah, I don't know where she got that. I think that's hindsight on her part. I think she's very proud of me now, and she thinks it must always have been that way. I don't know why she would have said that, but I read that someplace. That's great. I'm glad that's
You're
what
flattered by it. When you were Bishop of Scranton, you really were one of the first people to come out and condemn this idea of pro-choice in politicians. You said, "I will give no support in word or action that could in any way be misconstrued in favor of any politician or political party who professes a pro-abortion position or takes refuge in the so-called pro-choice position." Now, you know as well as I, this is not necessarily shared by everyone outside of the church or in the church necessarily. And they say, we're not a one-issue church. We need to look at all the broad range of political views when judging a candidate or a party. What would you say to that?
Yeah, I try to be outgoing, but I've never specialized in popularity. That hasn't been my dominant concern through the years. I think that that's an evasion on the part of even Catholics. You might get it even from some priests. You might get it from some bishops. I don't know that you do, but you might get it from some religious or from some Catholic lay persons that we are not a one-issue church. Well, that to me, that's just double talk, because life is the basic issue, and if you want to say someone who's trying to defend life is a one-issue person, then say it, that's fine. But what else is there to defend or be concerned about if the person is dead, except bury him? Then that's a corporal work of mercy that you have to carry out. But that's just, to me, that's an absurdity. Of course, we're concerned about the poor, but you shouldn't have to spell all those things out. They're all part of the code. They're part of our creed. They're part of our belief. But they all stem from the reality of life itself. No life, you don't have any racial problem, you don't have any Semitic problem.
Is that how you would answer your critics who say sometimes they charge you with going outside of morals? Yeah. They say you're getting into politics.
Yeah, sure. It's the old story that I've written about before. Every preacher knows it, that about the fellow who sat there applauding the preacher when the preacher was condemning adultery and theft and lying and corruption and whatnot. And then the preacher started talking about drunkenness. And he jumped up and said, "Now you're not preaching anymore, you're meddling." It all depends on whose ox is gored. If you cannot avoid speaking about public policy, and public policy, an awful lot of public policy has a moral dimension to it. Doesn't matter what politician holds it or doesn't hold it. Doesn't matter whether it's going to advance or impede someone's political status. It's public policy, and therefore by its nature it's open to assessment by everybody. And you don't stop becoming a citizen because you become a priest or a bishop.
Some quick questions just before we go. Cardinal Ratzinger recently said the suppression of the Tridentine Rite in 1969 caused extremely serious damage in the Church. He says we need a reform of the reform, and that it was a serious break with the history of the liturgy. Do you think we need reform of the liturgy?
Oh, gee, I don't think there's much question about it. I don't know if we need a reform of the liturgy, although I never lightly dismiss any terminology that Cardinal Ratzinger uses. Rather, I would think in terms of a faithful carrying out of the liturgy. If we took the rubrics as they currently are and were absolutely faithful to them and didn't introduce our own idiosyncrasies, our own fads, if we didn't fool around with them, and most particularly, if we didn't try to exercise, to celebrate the Mass as an act of political correctness, I think it'd be a totally different thing. So, reform, yes, I suppose, but I think I would begin asking what the liturgy is really supposed to be, what the actual rubrics as written are supposed to be, and then see how faithfully we are according with those before we try to determine what kind of reform is needed.
Do you see the Latin as part of that, a return to the Latin, as he suggests there's somehow some tragic break?
I think that many, many things, the liturgy was only one, many things could be looked at as victims of a tragic break. I have always argued that we did not prepare the Church adequately for the Second Vatican Council. In advance of the Council, we didn't explain what was about that. We didn't explain what a Council is. Then came the Council, and we left it to magazine journalists purportedly to tell the world what was going on at the Council. Then we made virtually no effort after the Council to implement the documents of the Council. Now, There are 16 basic documents of the Second Vatican Council. You could walk down the streets of New York today, and I wager any city in the United States, and ask the first 10,000 people you meet if they've read one document of the Second Vatican Council. You'd be lucky if you found anybody. But you'll find a lot of people who will talk about the spirit of the Second Vatican Council. This is where I think the tragic break was, because they jumped from what they thought to be the thinking of the fathers of the council to what they thought to be the spirit of the Vatican Council, and they never paid any attention to the substance of the documentation. The same is true with the liturgy, I think. Whether it's in Latin or in English, in my judgment, is of far less importance than whether or not the Mass is celebrated reverently, thoughtfully, and in accordance with the rubrics.
We are about to see a vote on an inclusive sacramentary and lectionary at the next bishops' conference. You were part of a group of cardinals who went to ask Rome to speed this along after several years of it languishing there in the Vatican without final permission. Why is this necessary, and will this help to enrich the liturgy?
Why we went to Rome should be clearly understood. We went to Rome at the request of the president of the National Conference of Catholic Bishops, the cardinals did, but only to ask that Rome make a decision. We didn't go to pressure the Holy See into producing any particular version, approving or disapproving any particular version, but a proposal had been there for a good period of time. I think it's always unwise to have undue delays when people have conscientiously tried to work on something, whether they're right or wrong, whether this is a better option than that, in good faith. And I think that sometimes the bishops are not always portrayed in good faith. It's assumed that there are some terrible Turks among them who just want to throw bombs and wield axes on the liturgy, and they have no sense of tradition and the needs of the people. I don't think that that's true. They're trying to the best of their ability to accomplish what they think is in the best interest of the Church, but then they always leave the final decision to the Holy See. But after there's been extensive work and it goes to the Holy See and nothing is done, then uneasiness sets in, misconceptions, misconstructions, sides form. So I think it was good that the cardinals went, and there was an absolute agreement when we did that whatever the Holy See said then, that was it. That would end the argument.
After 11 years of running the diverse New York Archdiocese, at the age of 75, Cardinal O'Connor submitted his resignation. He was bound to do so by canon law, and though it was submitted in January of 1995, the Holy Father has yet to accept it. At 77, he is as spry as ever.
Some people have suggested that it was precisely in the week that he turned age 75 that instead of going up to the altar 2 steps at a time, he made it 3 steps at a time, lest anybody get the idea that he was ready to retire.
When you do retire, how do you want to be remembered?
I hope as a priest.
That's it?
That's it.